Salem's Lot is a 2024 American horror movie directed by Gary Dauberman that's based on the iconic horror novel by Stephen King, which was first published in the 70s, and follows Ben Mears, an author who returns to his hometown of Salem's Lot, only to find it infested with vampires. He comes home just as an antique store is being set up, which is owned by a mysterious guy named Barlow and his associate Staker. There are also several kids in the town who also become involved with the nefarious activities of the vampires, and sooner or later, they all come head-to-head in a climactic battle to save the town. Now, I'm going to sum it up. This movie felt like a dollar store version of Stranger Things. The original film was a TV movie and was released in 1979, and it's very good, especially compared to this film. That movie built up its characters. It made the town feel like a real lived-in place, where you know all of the characters. You get to see the little details and small nuances that make the film's characters memorable and worth caring for. The 1979 movie had the amazing actor James Mason playing Staker, the proprietor of the shop, who's dressed elegantly and old-timey and has this mysterious, elegant aura to him. The original movie and the novel, of course, it's based on give him this intrigue. You want to know where the guy's coming from. You want to know why he's come here to set up his shop. You want to know who this guy is and what his motive is. And it really takes its time building that up, building suspense, making the world feel three-dimensional and lived in, and most importantly for a movie of this genre, it felt believable. The original was luring you in with other character threads and great suspense, and then finally it gives you that vampire horror in the movie that you deserve, that's been carefully set up and paid off. The remake is absolutely terrible in almost every way, and it's a prime example of how in order to streamline your movie to fit studio constraints such as running time, budget, and depictions of violence, you might have to make some hefty sacrifices. Salem's Lot was an incredible and immersive TV movie in the 70s. It had a novelistic and detailed approach that was constantly building up its story and delivering scares. Cut to 2024, and we have another TV movie, but it's hardly as immersive. It's shorter by an hour, and it's embarrassingly bad to look at, with terrible special effects, and an overall design that feels incredibly cheap, like they had no budget. I mean, there's a scene where Ben is speaking in a school classroom, and there's only like 6 kids in the whole room. I mean, what? There's a factor of budget, which is both objective and subjective opinion. If the film handled its budget better, it could have found a way to make the town feel larger than life. But it is a small town and oddly feels very small. But the 1979 movie feels bigger from a filmmaking perspective. The angles and locations, the big, open, expansive scenes shot in towns. Because the original movie was shot in the 70s. You could film outdoors, and it'd be the time period you're setting your film in. This film was shot in 2021, and because it's set in the 70s, the only scenes you can do outdoors without spending a ton of money on background work and set design is in the woods. And even in this movie, the woods look like it's fake or was done with CG backgrounds. It really does have this cheap, closed-off look, which I do think is a result of the movie trying to imitate the 70s. I mean, I'm glad they kept it in its original time period, but it just looks so bad. Some of the vampire stuff is honestly not even terrible, and I like the design of the vampire and everything, but just the cramped sets and small locations kill everything. I'm shocked this wasn't originally envisioned as a TV movie. This was always supposed to come out in theaters, and I kept hearing it's been delayed and delayed and delayed, and then it finally just came out on Max like so randomly. And it almost feels right. Like this looks like a movie that should be on Max. It just is a really ugly, ugly film. Not to mention the vampires incorporated into the story is just shit. Like the way this vampire is built up is terrible. The setup takes place over several hours in the original, where this one barely even like 5 minutes in, it just like shows you what the vampire looks like. I mean, what a massive way to kill suspense. But I get it. This is for the screenager audience. The movie's constantly like cut to shreds and is written horribly. Like everyone's constantly explaining things, whether it's the backstory or what a vampire does or how they're going to alert the sheriff and get a priest. No one talks normal in this movie. It's not even a writing issue so much as it is a pacing issue. They're trying to get so much done in such a short time, so interactions that should feel natural just don't. There are scenes where characters go to hang out which introduce other characters, and this is a normal thing in movies. Yes, you continue a scene and you can keep unfolding and showing new characters, but with this movie where people are killed off, you have like a new character right away. There are scenes where you're introducing one character and the next scene is introducing another character, then the other character gets killed off. Like, it's so fast, you don't have time to feel anything. Showing someone for 1 second and then having them come back as a vampire leaves virtually no feeling of impact. It's like some random character they showed for 2 seconds gets attacked and comes back as a vampire, and it's supposed to be horrifying. But like, we have no idea who these people are, so why should it matter? This happens specifically to Spencer Treat Clark's character in Undertaker, who's shown falling asleep in a graveyard and then somehow not waking up till it's night because the story needs him to. Like, why did no one wake him up? Why is he just asleep and left here to like cover the grave at night? Then he just turns into a vampire. And it's like, why should we care? Who is this guy? And then we meet Bill Camp's character, who he's never shared the screen with Spencer Treat Clark's character, and then they meet in a diner, and it's like they're supposed to have known each other. And we're supposed to believe they're friends because apparently everyone in this town is close or some shit like that they say. It just feels like a real cop-out. Like, nothing feels believable, which is a huge problem. And there's also other things which go completely underwritten or played out, like all the kids' relationships in the movie. The kids are great actors, but the writing they have to deliver and the lines are just awful. And because there are so many characters, they kind of introduce the kids' characters to us in a scene that feels like it's in the middle of the movie. These kids are being bullied, and one kid, Richie, has his hands tied up, and then he manages to free himself. And then he randomly pulls out a playing card. It's talking about how Harry Houdini's his inspiration. But like, we never actually see what this kid likes or what he does in his spare time. He just says what he says because the plot asks for it. And later in the movie, when he's tied up, he just escapes from the rope off screen. It's not even shown to us. And he just attacks the Staker character and escapes. It's like way too easy. And it's not like the Houdini thing is really built up. It's just dropped so casually at the beginning and then kind of left there. So when it comes back later, it really doesn't feel like a big payoff. And then he just kills Staker. Like, it's insane how in the original you have this build-up, you're wondering who this guy is. In this, he's just some random guy. I was honestly laughing when he's on screen because it's so cheesy. This weird, old-fashioned dude just like pulling up to kids in the woods like, do you need a ride? Like, in the original, he actually felt like a character. You actually felt like you wanted to know what this guy's deal with is. In this, it's just like he's such an obvious sus villain. Somebody gets killed, it's like, what? It really is just an awful choice. And then there's also the matter of Richie learning about all these rules of vampires from comic books. But he's never shown to like comics early on. He just goes under his covers and starts reading about vampire comics and writing down rules on how to stop them because his friend got bit. And it's not a huge deal. It's not like we need to see his love for comics. He doesn't need to tell us whether he's a passionate Marvel or DC fan for the movie to work. No, it's a kid's room. Sure, he's a comic book, whatever. It's not about that. What I'm trying to get at, though, is the movie is only driving the plot forward because it needs to. It's not building up something previously established in the story, and it doesn't have to. But movies and stories, in general, are a lot better when you use elements previously told to be important to continue building your story. If you established Richie like comics early on, showing him then later reading comics and learning how to defeat vampires through them would feel earned and more immersive, like you've gone through a journey with the character. As the movie is, it's just like it's on fast forward mode. You're just going through the motions and cutting to the important beats without taking the time to actually revel in the important story, which is probably one of the worst things a movie can do. It begins in fast forward mode off the bat, constantly introducing you to characters and then having these characters die so new characters can take their place or establish a relationship, but you never get time to understand who these people are, except for like single conversation scenes, which are cheesy. Take, for example, when it's Ben and Susie, the love interest, and they meet and they're bonding at the drive-in theater. It's the first time they've been on screen one-on-one together, and they're already reciting the most like cliche romantic dreck you've heard. Like, she says like, oh, I'm the small town girl, I know everyone in town. They're like looking at the cars, and she's like telling him about every single person, which is also giving you characters. It could be a good way to explain characters, but it's just so quick, so cheesy. And then he says something along the lines of, oh, I'd like to get to know you. And it's not bad, but it's like the most amateur, basic, and like overused way to establish connection, especially if it's the first time they're hanging out. A good movie would have them forced to bond in an awkward scene and keep having those interactions. Maybe they'll get to know each other and we'll grow from that. And then eventually in the movie, further into the film, they'll bond and then have this conversation scene where he basically says, like, hey girl, you're pretty hot, maybe I can get to know you a little better. And maybe she'll say, sure, all right, pick me up at 10. But the point is, the movie just rushes its relationships right away, so nothing feels natural. It's trying to get through everything and leaves you with nothing worthwhile watching, because all the characters are voids. They're empty shells. It's like the movie is cannibalizing itself. At the end of the day, the movie suffers from extreme rushed pacing. It's a huge 439-page novel, and the original TV movie was 3 hours and 3 minutes. And this is also a TV movie that's less than 2 hours and also less than the original story. So to sum it up, here are the lessons, kids, you should take home with you. If your movie is worth watching, keep the stories and keep the build-up. You can always come back and trim a scene down the line or cut down dialogue, but it's good to start off with all of your ideas and flesh it out. For first-time writers and filmmakers, it's good to give it all you got and then edit it when you're done. Salem's Lot is like a movie that started with most of the pieces missing, and with a project like that, you just can't put it back together. A crucial build-up is important for any movie, and while studios like their movies occasionally short and sweet, unless it's a giant fail-safe blockbuster, it's great to have a better story than a movie people will hate. A great hook is good too, but the movie rushes its hook. You shouldn't reveal your best stuff right away, as Salem's Lot does by showing the vampire right off the frickin' bat. No, build it up and give other good stuff along the way, and you'll have a good story. And last lesson, if you have a low budget, or you can't really make the project you want to make, adjust to make your project work or make tweaks so it will look better. A lot of movies utilize these elements great. Dead End is a great horror indie film from 2003 that doesn't ever show the gore or horror they're looking at, but through the writing and implied terror and the actors just doing a great job with facial expressions, you don't even need to see the most violent stuff you'd usually expect in a movie like this. Even in 2016's The Witch, the Robert Eggers film debut, he didn't even show the actor's feet because he couldn't afford to get period era shoes, and he used clever camera angles to hide it. So there's lots of ways you can make your movie work even if you don't have the budget for it. And I really don't know what to say here because this was a Warner Brothers release, who have made major studio movies. And this was supposedly supposed to go to theaters, but we get scenes in this where it looks like a priest is wielding a hybrid cross with a lightsaber. It's just really fucking ugly. But again, it boils down to all these elements we just discussed, so it could be more of an issue than just the look of it. You could argue they were stuck with this low budget and had to film on these tight sets and very obvious green screen backgrounds where all these actors are huddled together and look like they're reading lines that were cobbled together simply to drive the story along. It's seriously bad. Or you could just argue that the studios will keep adapting Stephen King's books until they have to remake the ones they already remade. And who knows, maybe they'll be better at this point. One can only hope. So guys, I hope you learned something. Let me know what you think of Salem's Lot. I really thought it was terrible. If you want something that's similar but great, check out the original Salem's Lot. Or check out Midnight Mass, the Mike Flanagan TV series that was 100% inspired by Salem's Lot. That's like a way better version of this movie. And again, if you want to check out this movie, I would just check out the one from 1979. It's also on Max. Much better. Watch that one and then watch this if you have to watch it. It's just worth watching them back to back to seeing how different they are. So guys, thank you so much for watching. See you on the other side.